We're on to reading of the district mission statement.
All right. Ipswich Public Schools aspires to empower all students to be global citizens who are effective communicators, analytical problem solvers, and savvy consumers of information. We propose to do this through an emphasis on communication, critical thinking, creativity, self-management, perseverance, and collaboration. Students will be active partners in authentic learning, offering voice and choice in demonstrating competency.
Thank you. All right. Next, we have announcements and special acknowledgements. Start with announcements. The school committee will meet on Monday, March 2nd and Thursday, March 5th at 7 p.m. here in the Middle High School Ensemble Room. Mutual Concern Subcommittee will meet on March 4th at 4 p.m. in the Middle High School Guidance Conference Room, and the Policy Subcommittee will meet there to follow at 5 p.m. I just wanted to announce that we had mentioned at the last meeting we were going to push the timeline out from the originally published budget calendar. So our plan is to not talk in specifics about the budget tonight. We'll talk more about the details on Monday with the potential vote happening on Thursday. Any other announcements?
I want to acknowledge the Choral Fest last night. Oh, were you going to say
Yeah,
that?
no,
Oh,
go ahead.
It was
Yeah.
great. It was amazing how much music and all the students that were involved, and it was a great night. So congratulations.
Yeah. If anybody has not listened to Let the River Run, then
Yeah,
Amazing.
Unstoppable was great.
yes.
That was
yeah.
great.
All of it's so good. All right. Anything else? Okay. All right. Next up, we have paying grant committee appointments. So we've been advertising these over the last several weeks. We have received some applications, and specifically, we are looking to appoint an elementary parent, a secondary parent, and one at-large community representative. Do you have any feedback?
I think they're all well qualified and have shown that they're excited to be part of more in the community and have already taken action to do so. So I think they're all wonderfully qualified.
So of the 3 applications that we received, are each of those, like, we have a 1-for-1 in terms of the seats that we need?
Yeah, so we'll have, technically, we have to designate the roles that they have. I think based on what we have the 3 applicants for the 3 positions. My first glance, there was a lot of overlap in what ages the kids were, because their children were, so we could think about if there's a strategy for who we pick as the elementary parent, secondary parent, and which one falls at large. I think one person could definitely not be secondary, one person could definitely not be elementary. So I think we have some flexibility, though, with how we want to go about it. I don't know that we need a major strategy there, but whatever anybody wants to suggest.
Suggest the designees.
Yeah.
So is it part of, are we making a motion? Or are we discussing where, like,
Either way, I mean, you can
we need to make
throw
a
it out.
motion? though.
Yeah, there will be a motion to appoint, yeah.
So Grace Garrison would be the one who would be most applicable in terms of the age of because she's got the 2 elementary age children, most appropriate for that specific appointment. Is it okay if we talk through the 3 of them in terms
Yeah.
of, okay, just identifying who would sort of go where? And Andrew, is he more mixed age? He's got
Yes.
elementary and middle school, who will be moving to high school next year. So he could be, is it a 2-year appointment?
Yes. Go either way or not.
And, oh, I see. So really Erin or Andrew could go middle or high.
Right. I don't, yeah. go either way. They're pretty interchangeable in terms of where their kids are at.
Sure.
I think Andrew has more longevity in middle because he has fourth and eighth, and then he'll have, oh, wait.
It's secondary, so it's
Yeah.
middle and high,
Oh,
yeah.
okay, yep.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense, though, because that rationale makes most sense. So, a group wave or individual motions?
Maybe, I think we could do either, but I would, maybe if you're gonna do it in a group, just. let's
Okay.
just throw it
How
out there
about,
so
we'll
everybody knows what
keep
we're
it
voting
simple
on.
then. I move to appoint Grace Garrison as the elementary appointee for the Payne Grant Committee new member.
Second.
Okay, moved by Haley, second by Jen. Further discussion? All in favor? Okay, motion passes.
Move to appoint Andrew, is it Bunel? Bunel?
No.
Bunel, not, neither of those, as the middle school appointee for the Payne Grant new member.
Pull that back, it's secondary.
Is that what we said?
Yeah.
Great. Wait, so we
Secondary
have to do it, so now we have a motion on the floor. We have to say no to that and
We've got a
You can
second.
I think
withdraw
you
your
could just
motion.
restate it.
You can withdraw your motion. or-
okay, withdraw the motion.
Try again. Secondary parent is what we're looking for.
I move to appoint Andrew Bunnell as the secondary appointment for the
Secondary parent.
parent
Yep.
appointment
You got this.
for the Payne Grant new member application.
Second.
Moved by Haley, second by Jen. Further discussion? All in favor? Okay, motion passes.
Should I go for the third? Let's see how this
Absolutely.
goes.
We're looking for at-large community representative.
Okay. Move to appoint Erin Mary as the at-large community appointment for the Payne Grant new member application.
Moved by Haley,
Second.
by Jen. Further discussion? All in favor? All right, great. Congratulations, everybody.
Congratulations, yeah.
And thanks all for the
Everybody,
interest.
yeah.
And I think that group will hopefully be getting rolling soon. And Paul's actually going to be our school committee member on that group. So that'll be great. Yeah. All right. Subcommittee, working group, and liaison reports. I know we're going to hear from Sasha after. Did you have anything other than like the two items that you wanted to share from budget?
I have a few.
Okay.
So first, logistics. We talked about schedule already for like what the next few meetings will look like. We have FinCom on Tuesday, March 10th, and Thursday, March 12th. They've asked for a third night, going back and forth with Emily just to finalize agenda and details. Not for right now, but Diana will just check in on availability for potentially for a third night. Tom, I forwarded you the note with a couple of date options, if you wouldn't mind just checking in with the admin, see what's necessary. At this point, we would at least want to evaluate it. The way the agendas look, we don't have a ton of time on all three nights, and so if that holds, we'll just put it back to two, but we just want to see what a third night might look like. We're going to go over some other, we're going to go over the FEFIs and override calculator later on the agenda. The only thing that I wanted to just do as a rundown to make sure that we're good was we had several things that we had asked for as follow-up for next week. So not to discuss the budget in detail, but what those follow-up items are. I want to make sure that we're prepared. So I had kept a list that I had shared with Tom. We're going to get it in sort of the form of a Q&A. I just want to run through it. So if there's anything missing, again, not for discussion, just make sure we've got it on the list so that Tom has it so we can do any follow-up. So the first was, in general, it's the areas where we recommended cuts. So health teacher, gym, counselors, RBTs to paras, the bubble classroom, ESL at Doyon. I'm sorry, I'm going fast. There was the question about stipends and Compass Committee. There's a question about enrollment in high school athletics. There were a few questions about administrative team. And that is the full list that I have. Is there anything else that somebody remembers or is tracking on your list that I might have missed? Jenny, looks like you got something.
The teacher feedback summary?
Not able to receive that.
Well, we're not, but we were going to get a summary of it.
Yeah, I think that's probably going to be part
We
of
can't get the actual, like, raw information, but, so I'm interested to see that.
I may be confused about what that list is, but we also discussed the assistant coaches and where they fell within the scope of the budget.
Okay.
That goes directly to, I think, cuts in forward-facing, student-facing positions.
Yes, so let me, I was thinking about those, you're right, and I was thinking about those two. These were ones we specifically had questions about, where we wanted more information for sub-varsity coaches, funding that through the revolving account. The second area like that was to see what we could fund through the
Athletics.
School food service?
food service, I was struggling with the name, the food service, the climate resiliency manager, and you and I had a couple questions on headcount versus dollars. So for all four of those, I understand those have been made, so we'll see them in the budget on Monday.
Correct.
Because those were shifts, these were, the only distinction on the list was these were, we had questions where we wanted more detail.
Yeah.
Is that, okay, good, I just want to make sure I.
No, I just didn't want to get lost.
No, you're right, I would, did the point of, let's make sure we know everything that we're going to see next week.
And the cost of graduation?
Thank you, yes.
The NEASC accreditation?
Yeah, apologize, I don't have that listed.
No,
on there,
no,
So
I-
thank you, Tom,
no.
yes. Did you have something else? You look like you had something you wanted to add, just to make sure.
You listed off the positions earlier, but like within that, there's going to be a lot, I'm assuming, a lot of information in terms of the specific data that we requested, the standards, the
Yes.
the implications to. Okay, I just wanted to make sure those details were.
Yeah.
Specified the.
Good question. I'm hearing yes from Tom. I was just sort of in short form covering the list, but you feel like that's what, okay, that's what's included, yep.
So I just want to add, and maybe this is a little bit more specific, but with the Compass Committee, not just the stipends, but how it works under the, is it the Director of Teaching and Learning? Is it- How the roles compare?
I want to make sure we're not getting too deliberative, so I feel like if there's anything else that hasn't been brought up in the past, maybe just an email to, that might have been, but I just want to make sure we kind of keep this as a subcommittee report, so if there's, I'm glad you
Yeah,
have a
we're
list.
not discussing, this is
Yeah.
just purely, will
I
this
know.
be on the list? So just clarify your question, just to make
Yes,
sure.
question.
Okay.
Okay,
I have that.
okay, great.
Yeah, so I'm glad we reviewed the list. If
Anything else?
anything else or new,
Okay.
I feel like I need to go through some emails and make sure I've pulled out all the questions I have, that we can, got a couple of days.
Send them
so
along.
Send them along,
We're-
okay.
We're in a very good place with the documents, but we have till Monday, so
All the way till Monday.
plenty of time.
Yeah.
All the way till Monday.
Okay.
And thank you for gathering that, Tom. Tangentially related to budget, there's an audit committee meeting coming up in April, I think the 7th, that Tom and I believe you're going, right?
Yes.
It's going to be a fun time. You and I are attending, and then I've been exchanging some emails with Carl about the strategic planning committee. I don't know the date. The finance is going through what they've called like that prioritization exercise. The select board is doing it next week. And I'm going to follow up with Carl to see how that goes next week. They'd asked about us doing it. There's still a lot of outstanding information from Tri-Board that we had brought up that we needed, that we still haven't received, so I don't want to do that without knowing. One, for example, we said which items on the list could move. No point in discussing something that can't move date. We don't have that yet, so I don't want to go through a list of 80-something if only 2 of them can move. So there was a couple other things like that that we wanted. I'm not able to attend, but I'll watch how the select board does it, debrief with Carl, and talk about what that might mean for us. From the school, the big things are the override, from the school building, again, which, like, those dates, the timing's gonna be driven by need, not so much by prioritization. So it would be us opining on more of the town-related things, but we'll wait for that list. So, no action, just so you know what conversations are happening.
Communications?
If we can, I'd like to hold that one till later. There's a couple placeholders for things that we're going to discuss tonight that we usually fill in, like appointments being one of them. But if we could come back to that at the end, that'd be good because we can fill it in based on our discussion. Thank you.
Note to myself. Okay. Operations?
Yeah, we met Tuesday to kind of do an initial review for our goals. We had said we would do a February mid-year assessment, self-assessment on how we're doing. So we did that. It was a great meeting. We put together a bunch of notes.
Bring your mic closer.
Oh,
Dee.
sorry, thanks. And requested that go on an agenda item coming up soon so that we can go through it all together as a group and sort of complete a whole committee mid-year self-assessment.
Yep. Perfect. Well, get on that. Okay. Thank you. Athletic Policy Working Group?
So, Athletic Policy Working Group. So we met, and the last time, was it last meeting or the meeting before? We had kind of presented things and gotten some feedback about writing an athletic policy. The working group met and came up with what is policy draft JJIB in your folder, athletic policy. And then since then, just recently, I got a really nice piece of feedback from Haley that I wasn't able to enter in, but thank you, because it was really, really nice. So I'd like to, if it's okay to go through this now a little bit, or does anybody have any questions? But I think I'd like to regroup this with the working group and add in some of Haley's feedback, or at least go through it with the working group. But
I think that makes sense.
yeah. But if you have any feedback on this, maybe get it to me. I don't know how productive it is to go over this now if we're going to meet again, but, and really it would just be Jenny, Paul, 'cause Matt is on the working group, and Haley gave feedback, and Diana gave feedback.
Could you do just a quick, so this is obviously markedly different than what we looked at, which was more a policy for a working group, right? As opposed to this, which is more high level related to athletics. Is there,
Right.
there's a distinction between them?
Right, so, last time we presented to you two potential policies to add, and one was a coaching policy, and we were trying to put that under our personnel, I think it's section G of our policy manual, and it was basically just a coaching policy on how to hire, because we had nothing in our manual, although there's a coaching handbook, there was nothing in our policy manual for that. Then, separate from that, we were trying to define an athletics subcommittee and its role. And I got some feedback, and I think we all kind of discussed, should it be a subcommittee? Should it be a working group? Should it be a task force, which Diana gave some feedback to. And this policy is a combination of those two things and defines, in the very bottom, we decided, the working group decided to call it a continuation of an athletics working group. Take the word policy out. And then this also encompasses or includes the coaching details so that they're not in two separate places.
I appreciate the work you did, because it clearly captures the spirit of what I was clumsily trying to get at. The one thing
seen what? I'm sorry.
Well, the working group shall meet at least 4 times during the school year, aligned with the beginning of each sport in order to. What is the working group going to be discussing? It doesn't talk anywhere in here about the in order to. It meets in order to do what? And could just be a simple half a sentence, in order to review your quarterly progress in the athletics program. I mean, but I think we need that to really anchor that paragraph. But I really like what you did.
Okay.
I'm going to add it as a comment, because,
Yes, please.
all right.
And Paul, feel free to also like email me the feedback
will.
and then I'll share it with the group.
Sure.
But yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that group, the work you're doing, and sounds like you're going to continue to do.
Getting
But
there.
yeah,
We
no, it's
are
good.
and we will.
I'm excited about it. Awesome. All right. Who else has met? Advisory? You guys met?
Not since our last meeting. We meet the first Friday of the month, so it'll be next Friday.
Okay. All right. Anybody else met and has a report? Okay. Don't have Jack tonight. Tom, do you have anything to report?
I do not.
Okay. I'll just thinking along here. All right. So we are now going to have an override calculator review. I know Sasha's and Tom have done some preparation for this.
You could do it from,
Over there, Jenny. All right, just while I get this set up, these documents are all in your folder. We're going to start with the override calculator. This is one that came up a few meetings ago. It's even helpful. Too small, right?
It's small, but whatever. I guess you're
All right, we can't read
you're
numbers,
making
but
the
at least
changes here
if I
too.
need to orient people
Sure.
to,
if I can.
I think
Yeah,
it's
it's not-
helpful to have it up there.
okay.
Either way.
I'm going to go there because I can't read it. So follow along on yours and then go back to
Can
the
you not
original.
see it on your screen when it's projected?
It's not on my screen, it's only up there.
Let's see.
All right, so on the first tab in the calculator is the baseline for level service. So that means all the programs, all the classrooms, the number of people, everything stays the same across all 4 schools. The 2 assumptions that are important here that drive all those numbers, first is that we assume we're getting a 3% growth from the town, 3% revenue growth from the town every single year. That's been the case previously, but this year it's closer to 2%. That's a big difference. It's about a $400,000 difference. The other assumption conservatively is that the school budget grows by 4.5%. Again, that's for level service. Everything just stays the same. That's driven by salary increases, step and lane changes, and large items like healthcare, which is significantly growing. I think we're feeling that personally. We certainly talked about in the schools last year that went up by 20%. So the 4.5% is conservative, but the important thing is those were our baseline assumptions. That's where we started with. If you look at the details in that top row, sort of that orange row, that's what the funding will look like, revenue from the town each year, based on 3%. The green row is what we're projecting our school budget to be. So starting with 26, we've got the current numbers for FY '27, both from the town in orange and then for the school in green. So that's the current budget as it stands as we reviewed a couple weeks ago at $41.8 million. The row below that shows how much money we need to take from the override or from the stabilization fund. Right, so we have a $1.6 million difference. We're going to draw that from our stabilization fund. Now, if you look at the bottom row, that shows the total balance in that stabilization fund. So where that runs out is where we need to put in place is where we need a new override to fund that again. So we run out in FY '29. Which means we do an override before, and we've talked about before, it's good for us to have a little buffer for that, so we're not funding it last minute, reduce the risk. The next override, if we go with what we've done historically, would be for 5 years. Would last us for 5 years. So if I go 2, 3, 4, 5. So this column O, the cumulative amount that we would need, the deficit that we would need to fund is almost $22 million. That's our starting point. Now, we're not there because we've done some work, but this is baseline level service, assuming 3% from the town, which we also haven't gotten. So that's kind of our starting point. The next tab shows the changes we've made to get to better projections based on reductions and what we also know from the town. But before I go there, just orienting to what's on the page, or just clarifications on anything here.
Yeah, I have two. So last year, we extended the previous 5-year override by 1 year, right? We were able to do that?
Yes.
Okay, so we'd be voting for the next override in spring of '29?
Spring of '28,
Spring of '28,
to
okay.
fund fiscal '30.
Okay, okay.
Because to Sasha's point, we would seek to have at least a year in between the vote and the need. Because if we had the vote in May and needed to cut the budget, like if the vote failed, we'd have a month and a half between May and July 1st to,
Got it.
right.
Okay.
So we'd like to have a whole year in between.
Can I ask a clarifying question there? You said fiscal 30. This shows a deficit, and I understand this is just all theoretical. This shows if we were to continue with these assumptions, this shows the deficit in '29. So you'd have to ask.
Well, it shows going into '29, there isn't enough to fund what is needed. There's $739,000 going into fiscal '29. So there isn't the 3.5 or 3 million that's needed. The bottom row 15, is the balance in the stabilization fund each year.
But to Diana's point, we still, I think, I'm reading the same way, you need to have a vote 28. So you're still in a deficit, maybe not of one something million heading into,
Correct.
right? So you'd have to have a vote 28, not.
Or ahead of 27,
Or 27.
which is in 1 year from now.
Which is, yeah.
Right, you want,
I would let's hold the timing to the next
Yeah.
one, because that's going to shift in a second.
No, I
just
know.
in
I
orienting-
just
yeah,
wanted to
yeah.
understand.
Yep.
And the elementary school vote is
Yeah.
in there too, so that has to be,
Can
I mean,
I
it's
ask one
less
more
important.
question before we?
No, that's why we're doing this. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify too, that the 2%, did we also get 2% last year, or this?
so for fiscal '27, the year we're discussing, we have 2%.
Okay.
Fiscal '26, the year we're in, we get 2.9%. So just
It was
under
a decrease,
3%.
but it was,
Right.
but not as much. Okay,
In the prior years, we were getting 5 and 6%.
okay, okay.
We adjusted it down to 3% originally based off of last year. That's why we were using this for our initial assumption when we created this last year and then updated it in the fall.
Okay.
Yeah?
Thanks.
Just as a demonstration, because we know a level set budget would be 4.5% increase. But we have reason, well, I see what you're saying. The 3% is close to the 2.9. I'm saying if it's lower than that 3%, if you were to plug that in there, how much more dire does this get?
Change it to 2?
Right?
Well, that's the
Without-
second, that's the next tab.
Yeah, I mean, I can
that's the next
I can
step.
show you quickly. It's a $31 million override.
Okay, so if we make 0 cuts,
you make 0 cuts and we continue to get only a 2% growth from the town, the next override, if we do it consistently that we try to fund for 5 years, would be closer to 31 million.
If I could just add to that, because I think it's an important piece, that the 4.5% that we're talking about on this tab and the similar, factor that will be on the next tab is the ask of the taxpayer, not the actual cost of increase in growth to operations of the district. So that's important, right? So 4.5% is what we are realizing after we've taken into account all the offsets from grants and revolving funds. The cost of doing business is going up higher, much more than 4.5%. It's going up closer to 5.5%. So the capacity, I think the beginning and end of this exercise, as we've talked about for over a year now, is that we need to continue to work strategically and thoughtfully to reduce the cost of the operations of the school district.
So I'm going to use that to go to the second tab, but I also thought I was just pause for a second as context. When we started, actually last spring, we knew some of this was coming, so that's where we began the conversations. When we started up budget subcommittee again in October, and then going into this year, the draft budget that we saw and we reviewed, which included cuts, was because of this. It's not individual positions that we either didn't agree with or we didn't feel we needed, or we felt like there were places where we could trim things off the edges. We certainly can't go to the town with a 20-something million dollar override, and that's driving the need to make changes in a couple places. Some is what Tom is talking about, where can we get from some other funding sources? Some is how can we make adjustments? And some is going to need to mean that we make some cuts. And that's where it's coming from. And so I think the broader context, especially how big the number is important. Let me go to the next tab, which is, this is if we reduce the budget. And these are the numbers we're working with now for this current year, but also modeling out. So the two big changes are the first one that Diana mentioned, which is now we're assuming ongoing that it's 2% growth from the town. Fingers crossed that gets better, but we want to be conservative, and the best number we know is what we got this year. So if this year was 2%, we're going to assume that going forward. That's what we've done historically. The second is we lowered the school operating budget to 3% from 4.5%. That represents reductions. Okay. What that takes us to is it's still, if the next override were to be a 5-year override, it's still a $15 million override. So clearly our work is not done. We also don't feel comfortable that we should be asking, or that we would be able to pass a $15 million override. There was a lot of work to get here. We still have a lot of work to do. So I'll stop here again for questions, discussion about this piece and what's in here now.
How do you go from that 4.5 to 3? Like just saying, oh, we're going to reduce to 3, like as a number, obviously you have to back into that.
In the fall, we set a target for this year of $42 million for this budget, which is approximately the 3%, and then we said, let's try to repeat that. So we drew a line that we felt was reasonable to start with, and then we'll adjust up and down based on what that looks like in the change of services. So we needed some kind of a starting point, so that's why we used 3%.
I think the simple answer you're looking for is reductions.
You mean programmatically, how do we get there?
Right. Like, I mean, do you come at it from a numbers aspect first and say, like, how do we get this number somewhere where it feels more reasonable? Let's target 3%. And then later you figure out, well, what does that 1.5 look like? Versus you go in and you say, where can we cut? What feels appropriate? And that amounts to the 1.5%. Like, what's the order?
So from the administration's point of view, it's a little bit of both. What the budget subcommittee and Dr. Blake and I were doing in the fall was to come up with what are the sort of target areas that we, the administration, should be looking at, regardless of what the reductions should be or could be. Right? What are the type of things that, and this conversation, what we've shared directly with the principals, is what reductions would be reasonable outside of the context of budget cuts. We're good, we want to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollar. We should be looking very efficiently each year at not always, growing the cost, but what can we trim back as the dynamics of the town changes, right? So that's sort of an operating premise. What would we do anyways as good stewards of the budget to not just assume growth? What are some of those factors? The budget subcommittee came up with maybe 6 or 8 types of things, talking points. Look at things like, the co-teaching model. Look at things like class size. Look at things like, special education costs and our capacity to keep out-of-district students in district, right? Well, remember those types of conversations that we had back in the fall. So those are our drivers. We had a goal to hit, 42 million or less, which then caused what we anticipated to be a deficit approach. And then we took sort of the programmatic view of that using the guidelines that the budget subcommittee originated and the full committee sort of heard back in the fall. That became our sort of guiding light to the budget that Dr. Blake and I presented a month ago.
So, Sasha, can I ask a question? I think it's going to help me understand and answer part of your question. So the 3% is what we're looking at. So the budget that's been presented to us, the superintendent's budget, is a result of asking for a 3%.
Yes.
So
Which
everything we've
includes
discussed
which includes all of the offsets, bringing in grants and revolving funds and fees, athletic fees and other fees, preschool tuition, transportation costs, all of that has been brought into the budget as offsets to get us from, say, what would be like a 5% cost of doing business down to the request of the taxpayer, request of the town.
Right. So we look at level service and go, oh, we can't afford that. And then budget subcommittee says, administration, please go down to 3%. And then they come up with the tab that's the reduced budget, and this is where we are.
Yes. As Sasha said, column I for FY '27 are the 2 numbers that we have as of now.
And for, real quick, just for round numbers, so we keep talking percentages, just to make it real, a percent is about $400,000. So to go from 4.5 to 3%, it's about 600,000 that we work to find. I just wanted to add that, Paul, but please go ahead with your question. Comment.
It's more, yes, it is, I guess, a question. It's clear a ton of hard work and tough decisions have gone into this. Predictive model is, budget like this, I would start to get really. I guess, and I can't remember who I was talking to, I've always approached these things as yes if. We can do what you're telling us to do if. And I guess my question to the group is, I'm not new enough, but at what point do we go back to the select board and say, hey, we can do this, but here's the things that we're not going to be able to do anymore? Because it seems like we're doing this budget briefing in a vacuum. And we're hearing from the public, they don't want. And at some point, we have to go back to the town and go, listen, based on what you've told us we have, here's what we're no longer going to be able to do. And then give them the opportunity to either say we're comfortable with that, or, well, maybe we can, I know money's tight, we can find more money. When is that venue where we go back and go, select board, based on what you've allocated to us, here's everything that the town has told us they want, and we're not going to be able to give to them because of the tough decisions we're being forced, not forced to do, but under the constraints you've given us, here's the best we can do. When is that moment?
We brought that up last year a little bit in the, how does the tax base split between schools and the rest of the town? We have not pursued it. I like the idea of bringing it back up. It's a tri-board. I mean, we could start it directly with select board like we've done on a couple other things, but yeah,
I just, you saw it at the last meeting with Winthrop families. I mean, it's about our children and about the future that we're going to be providing. And I'm not saying that we're all invested in it, but I think at some point we have to go back to the town and go, listen, based on the number you gave us, don't, this is all the stuff that we've done that we're not gonna be able to do, and if there's any way to allocate more to us or something, I think we owe it to the town to go back to the select board who gave us that pot of money and say, hey, here's our best advice on how to spend that money. And then you know, have them understand what we're seeing, because I mean, it's just a tough position to be in, and it's the if, you know, we can do it if, and I don't think, go to our bosses, I think, to.
I'm with you. So I think it's a consumption choice, and to your point is, if we need to take more from the town, is that trade-off worth it? We can start it immediately with the select board as a heads up. We want to begin this conversation. We got finance committee in a couple weeks. That's a good place to do it as well.
Or just
We can
give
take
the
that as
results of our budget meetings, like, hey, here's where.
I'm totally with
But when
Yeah.
when we take that to FinCom and Select Board, we've already voted on it. So there's,
Yeah.
right? Like, we've
Yes.
already said, we're agreeing to this now, we're presenting, it becomes our budget that we're presenting to them, versus I feel like what you're asking for is some invitation of a conversation before we would proceed.
And I know we're
So we
delaying
do it in a couple-
the count, I'm sorry, I know we're
Yeah, keep
delaying
going.
the calendar, but that's exactly right, Haley. I think before we vote, we owe them kind of an in-progress review of, based on everything you've told us to do, here's what it looks like, and it's not pretty, but it's the best we can do with the resources you've given us. And if you don't like this, then you need to give us more resources or give us further guidance. Because we're getting a lot of guidance from our constituents, you know, the parents, and I just think before we vote and go, is there any way that we can make this better with the select board understanding what we're going to deliver to them? You're right, I think we vote on it, then we've said, hey, we're good with it, and oh, by the way, are you okay with it? I think it's backwards. But I'm not sure we have the time to do it this year, so.
So I'm with you. Just for consideration for mechanics, if we vote, we're voting on the budget that the superintendent has presented. Once we vote, it becomes our budget, but we can still make adjustments, so that once we vote, the clock doesn't stop. We still have opportunity to have that conversation. I'm not proposing that, I'm just saying, I'm just sharing it in terms of the mechanics of, sure, we could pursue that before we vote. We could vote, but then continue to pursue. There's strength to both of them. I just share that as a consideration if we're talking about that as a path forward.
I don't want to get a budget, like, I don't think.
No, that's what we're here to
No,
do
that's what
tonight.
this- that's
the
what this
point of
conversation is.
I don't, I'm not sure I would feel if it were me, I would love to have a conversation with the select board, so this is kind of what has been proposed to us. Before we endorse the superintendent's budget as something that we think is feasible or acceptable, and I haven't seen it yet, so I don't, you know, because we saw the draft, I haven't seen the final one yet.
Well, it's not final until the school committee votes it. You've seen the presentation that we made.
But I didn't agree with some of the stuff. So, and I think we were talking about necessarily moving some stuff around to solve that problem. So I don't know, I don't want to be the wrench in the gears, but even if it's just an ad hoc meeting where we discuss some of our concerns about where the budget's taking us, I think would be appropriate for the vote. But I'm comfortably outvoted on that as well, because I know that I'm new to the process, so.
Does everybody think? Yeah, I mean, let's have the discussion about it, figure out how we move forward.
Well, can we just quickly, just because you guys won't be there on Monday, right? And then who's attending the meeting on the 5th from the school committee? And Matt, do we know?
Presumably.
Okay. Okay. So, I mean, we could wait and see what comes on Monday and Thursday, and then come back to this then, right? Like, I think the reason we wanted to still have this meeting tonight, even though Dr. Blake couldn't be here, was to be able to have some sort of incremental conversations that move us forward, right? So, like, maybe depending on what we see on Monday, how that conversation goes, and then what we see on Thursday, that would inform.
So if I may, they're almost two different things. Paul, what you seem to be asking and what, Haley, you're referring to. And I think they can live sort of in the same, universe, but I think we need to be aware that they're two different things. The budget that the administration had presented that we worked up to met the guidelines that the town provided us in terms of how much resource is going to be available. So when they gave us that, the amount of money that that the taxpayer would be able to contribute, called the town contribution. We then had, what the school department, budget was. We then took the town contribution, subtracted all of the known offsets, grants and fees and revolving funds, and then the difference is taken out of stabilization, right? That's how we land there. And I think if I may, just in transparency, I don't think the town is holding back on us. I don't, but,
I'm not implying they
oh,
are.
but we get 60% of the town's budget.
Yes, I'm not.
If I were a member of the select board, I would say, so what part of the 40% would you like us to cut
No, what I'm.
to give you more?
Okay, that's not what I'm implying.
No,
What I'm saying is that I appreciate the funding that the town has given us, but I think that where we sit as far as the budget goes, and whether it's student-facing position, whether it's counselors, whether it's physical education teachers, whether it's a host of things that have been on the block, that at some point we go, we're very thankful for the contribution, but here's the impact of what you've given us. I think we owe it to them.
Oh,
No, and so it's not two separate things. I think you did exactly, and we did what we were supposed to do with the guidance that was given to us. But now I think there's a point where we go back and give them a heads up that based on the guidance and the assets, or not assets, the money that they've allocated to
Resources,
us,
yeah.
resources, thank you. This is what that gets you. That's the part. And then, they can go, okay, I understand. That's all there is. And you go, okay, great. I mean, but that's, I think, what we owe, as a school committee, we owe up.
Oh, indeed.
And
Oh,
so
sure.
that's the part that, and maybe there is something they go, whoa, that's not what we, I'm not sure that's what we wanted. And that starts a different dialogue, right? But I think that there's just a missing component. And like I said, I'm comfortable if you all think that I'm wrong. And I'm okay with that.
So I have a, go ahead. So, Paul, I don't think you're wrong. I think we're in the middle of a process that doesn't feel really good. And it's hard to be part of a process where you have to make decisions to make cuts. And what we're about to go into, well, first of all, we've heard from the public. I think they're very engaged. It's actually been really great to hear from them. And then we've kind of designed a schedule over the next couple weeks where Monday being kind of an extra meeting so that we can discuss with a lot more information from Tom and Dr. Blake about what those proposed cuts look like in different areas. And we have to accept this budget or not. And then we go to the tri-board and the select board and say, presumably, this is the budget we've selected. And they very much will say why. They will question us. They will question the administrators. So that chance will come. It would be nicer if we had a bigger pool, but it's just, that's the process, unfortunately. But Monday, I think we're going to have an opportunity to discuss changes and shifts in those specific areas of cuts that was presented to us a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I have two things, right? One is, and then I'll stop you there, please. I've been part, more times than of uncomfortable situations with budgets and constantly having to jump where everyone's and prioritize certain funds. So I'm kind of smack dab thing, something that I'm unfortunately used to. I just wonder, and the tri-board communication is a mechanism that I would hope. That's kind of what I was discussing. I just think that it comes, you're right, I'm in the middle of a process, right? That's kind of, it's like the train's already down the rails. And as long as there's a point, I just think it's too late. By the time we present that thing to a tri-board, the ability to kind of adjust, maybe for the next year, we try to get it a little bit earlier after, so we can have a conversation about doing that, especially if it keeps going like that. So, I appreciate it. Tri-board, looking forward to it.
Can I
ask a
Oh,
quick
go ahead.
question about the 60% that you just said? So we know that that number is what we typically get from the town. So when we're talking about, in past years, we got a 5 or 6% increase from them, and then it went down, to closer to 3, and now we're dropping closer to 2. We're still within the 60% of the town's budget, right? So I feel like that might be something too, when we come to the select board, that they can orient us around what the impacts to the overall town budget are, that it's not like they're saying, this school is now getting 55% of the budget, or that kind of thing, right? And so I think having, for us as a committee, but also for the town to hear, like, this is what these implications are to the town's budget, and how that trickles down would be helpful.
Yes.
Careful what you ask for, we could end up with 50.
Yeah, and if I just, I think the important piece is if I broaden the context, not so much the changes we're making to this year's budget. The context is that we're looking at a $15 million override and the impact of that to the town as an overall, so you consider that with the town and the school, and that's what it is. And so a % difference brings that number down. Would it be worth making that 1% difference to avoid an override that looks like that? That's a conversation we absolutely should be having. So it seems like there's not resistance to it. I can start that tomorrow, just at least what it would look like and timing, and we can sort out how do we fit that into our schedule or what that might look like.
Well, if I may, if we're, speaking simple numbers, if we have 60% of available funds and the town size has 40%, essentially what you're asking is we go to them and we say, can we have 61, 62%, and you have, 38, 39?
No, that's not at all. I just think, what I think I'm trying to describe is that in order to be both good stewards of the money and the school system itself, we need to say, based on what you've given us, here's what we can. And it's not asking for more money, it's just, it is literally I hate saying on emotion, because it's people and things and kids, so it is emotion, and it's important. But based on the budget that we have been given, here's the core tasks we think that we can accomplish within the school system this year. Here's the things we can't. And just let you know. And it's not asking for more money, but it's saying if this is important to you, then you're going to have to either give us more money or revise the guidance to the school district, because we can't do both.
So yeah, I think that's where Jen, sorry to interrupt you, but I think that's where Jen was, sort of just for like an edification around it, is once we vote on it, a presentation is made by the administrative team, the same way they came and made a presentation to us. That will happen before FinCom, and then it will happen before Select Board as well.
No,
The administrator?
select board doesn't vote on our budget.
They don't,
No.
just the FinCom.
An edification for us all, then.
I just, yes.
I mean, that's a great point, because the select board, other than being, the town, the senior town board, if you will, has no authority whatsoever over the school department budget. The 7 of you are elected to make those decisions.
But they do have overall authority of of the allocation of the town's resources, right? So the 60/40, whatever that split actually is numerically, that comes from select board guidance to FinCom.
It does. So that certainly would.
So that's why we need to probably go back to them, and I'm not holding out a hat asking for more money, but I think as the stewards of this town, we owe them an impact on probably the cornerstone of Ipswich, which is the school district, right? And everybody, wherever you plant, it's the most important thing you do, right? And so, but I think you'd be hard pressed to tell me that something is more important than education of children, right? And so.
Let's
hear
go to
that from me, that's
let's
for
go to the next piece of this, because part of it is, where else do we have the opportunity to bring that $15 million down? I don't think it changes the conversation, but it changes some of the numbers, so that'll help. And then we can come back to this afterwards. Anything else on the calculator itself? Yeah.
May I just add something, which I think is sort of our starting point. It's almost a foundation point over the last, number of years, looking at row 11 on both tabs, that the town of Ipswich and the Ipswich School Department have historically, for a decade now, been presenting a structural deficit budget every year that relies on the use of override funds. So I think I think that has to be our premise going into each, which is why I called your attention to row 11. That is our deficit point every year. We are structurally in a deficit every year, reliant on override funds for operational purposes.
Else on, I'm going to come back to it, but just leave this for a minute. Anything else here? Okay. I'm going to switch to FEFIs, but connect the context to the two, because Budget Subcommittee has been talking about these two and the importance of them together. If you're following along in front of you, it's the FEFIs distribution for discussion, the PowerPoint, the slide. Right now, the FEFIs distribution goes to, we take a Manning Award off the top, but then goes to Payne grants and to Twig grants, and it's split between those two. What we've talked about is we have an opportunity. Last year, we added a carve-out for things that we fund on a regular basis. Those are things, or the opportunity to fund things like the college boot camp that we do every single year, the place-based learning or the field trips that we do every single year. Those always come to us in the form of grants. Last year in the policy, we updated it to say we want to do a carve-out so that we can take those right off the top because we know we always fund them, we always approve them, and we believe going forward, that programmatic enrichment should keep going. We've started to discuss this in a similar fashion, create a third bucket for ongoing instructional enrichment. So similar to those one-time programs, instructional enrichment that is showing up in the classrooms, that most of which came through a grant, but that we want to continue to fund on a regular basis for our students showing up in the classroom. The reason we began this conversation is we're expecting the FEFIs distribution to be about $1.2 million this year. That's almost double what it was about 5 years ago. And so we're getting to the point where it's huge amounts of money going to being available in the grants, which is wonderful. Last year, we're getting to where we're almost not even able to spend it all because of the grants coming in. And so that's where we feel like we have a better opportunity to split it between these three categories. Particularly in the context of the conversation we've been having around budget is we're starting to see some areas where we're making cuts. This also helps us to preserve lots of those programs, all of which are still in line with the original intention around enrichment and advancement. It allows us to distribute or to move the FEFIs distribution each year into those three categories. Not at a set dollar amount, but it would be a discussion for us each year to say, how much should we put into each of those categories? So the premise is we persist Payne and Twig, like it is today. Last year we added carve-out or programmatic enrichment, boot camp, place-based learning. And then we add this third category of ongoing instructional enrichment in a similar way to say there are specific arts, theater, music programs, STEM programs that are enrichment above and beyond state mandated programs that we should have in place, but that we would leverage the increase in FEFIs distribution to fund that category as well. Let me just pause here because in the next page, I've got some of the numbers just to make it real, but just around the three categories. Questions, thoughts, anything I can clarify?
Yeah, just, so obviously, FE's distributions are always focused on specifically enrichment. So athletics cannot be included here as part of a carve-out, or can they be?
I haven't listed it because we talked about arts, music, theater as areas that we specifically see as falling into it. The idea of enrichment is it's above and beyond what's available and what is managed by the state. We have several athletic programs that are above and beyond that could fall into enrichment in theory. Part of the intention of this is it comes here for that discussion, so we wouldn't automatically ever do anything.
Would field trips fall into that? Is that place-based learning?
Place-based learning, yeah. Yeah.
Field trips.
That's right. We have several that we automatically fund every single year, so we thought that would be a good just carve that out as one amount and just.
Right. But then there was the new ones, is this?
New ones, if they did a new trip that they haven't done before, that would go through the Payne grant.
Okay.
Just like it always historically has.
Okay. So if it's new, it would start from the paying grant to then
Yeah.
maybe at some point get into that.
I think that's an important
Carve out.
distinction. The ongoing programmatic and ongoing instructional are ones that are in place and have been in place.
Okay.
We wouldn't want to bypass the grant programs to identify things here. Anything new really should be going through those grants.
Right.
It might over time move into ongoing, but anything new should come through the grants. Or I'll say that's the recommendation that we put forward here.
Sure.
Yeah.
Should, should there, when it says that long-term, like, should there be like a, if it's been in place for 5 years, then
Yeah.
it's into that carve-out category? Should there be a number,
I see what you're saying.
you know, so it's not like, oh, it's 2 years, okay, that should be part of the carve-out? Or should it be,
Yeah.
if it's been in place for 5 years or more,
Yep.
then it can be part of that?
I like the idea. Let me make the note, and when we look at the policy, let's
Yeah.
talk
Oh,
about if we
okay.
feel like it
Yep.
fits. But I
Yep.
get where you're going. Yeah, okay.
So just for the purposes of saying this out loud for the listening audience and maybe for Paul, but the difference between Payne and Twig. Twig is capped, and that's Traverso Weatherall Innovation Grants, are capped, is it 7,500?
Yes.
Yeah, so they're smaller innovation grants, and then Payne grants are larger,
Yes.
past $7,500.
In the, sorry, I don't know why it keeps going out. In the details for discussion, there are a couple tabs. I'm starting the first one, which is just to do an illustration of what those categories might look like with some of the specific examples that we just talked about. So if I assume we've got 1.2 million, just using round numbers here, which is what we believe this year is going to look like. You could keep 350,000 for the Payne and the Twig. We would establish programmatic at about 300,000. That's a new category, so before that, 300,000 was going through Payne grants every single year. So it's not a change, we're just moving that 300 from that first Payne category into the ongoing. And then so examples there, place-based learning, the field trips I talked about, professional development is something we funded regularly, college boot camp, and then also mentioned was the Manning Award for library materials. That's a carve-out that is mandated in the document that we take off the top every single year. So another one that we're always doing. So for round numbers, call that 300,000. And then ongoing instructional, again, think about across any of the schools, arts, theater, music, STEM like robotics, things that are enrichment or advancement above and beyond foundational learning that we could fund through this. I used this example just because you can see how big the opportunity is. That 550, that's going directly to the budget that we've been reviewing. And now going back to the override calculator helps bring down the need for future overrides because we're infusing that money, just like we are with our other offsets, the revolving accounts, into the budget. This isn't an extra 500,000 we would go buy and do new things. It's money that's going to things that are already in there that we're offsetting. Like we've talked about the sub-varsity coaches. That gets funded through athletics revolving. It'd be the same kind of thing. Arts, theater, STEM could be programs, classes could be funded through that bucket. Yeah.
I think it's important to point out that the timing is such that it's, if we follow through with this, it obviously has the potential to be very helpful, but I think the word you use is opportunity. You know, we've been following kind of the same plan since, you know, for 15 years or so with the FES, you know, distribution. This, because it's growing the way it is, we have an opportunity to kind of reimagine how we can best utilize the funds. And again, the timing is such that it's good timing.
Yeah. Very good.
I think this is phenomenal. I'm really happy to see it. I think when we talk through the policy, we can get into the mechanics of what this looks like, right? So like sort of what Jenny was talking about in terms of anything new flows through grants. Then what is the voting? What is the conversation for the ongoing pieces? Like how annually will that be addressed? But that's a fun part of the conversation. I think this is amazing. So thank you for the creativity and,
Yeah, we can go there now unless there's other stuff on this. The other tab is last year's, what we approved, so what's in place this year that was approved on the second tab, and then historical distribution, so you can see it, but just very specifically there, Haley, kind of like Jenny was bringing up. The recommendation that's in the policy is that during the budget cycle, so we didn't set a specific date, but to say during the budget cycle, we would go through this activity, start with recommendations from budget subcommittee, but to bring here to say, one, in, like this example, how might we distribute the funds across 3 categories? So that could change year over year, but that we do it annually. So we wouldn't set it now in perpetuity. It was each year we would come back to it because we're always going to face something different each year. And so we want to make sure we're having the conversations. That's built into the, we'll look at the policy, but I just want to
Yeah.
get back to your comment.
I think there was conversation about that, Tom, you'd be able to highlight the parts of the budget that would theoretically fall under this ongoing instructional enrichment.
Yeah.
And
That
one
would
of
give
the,
us an interesting, number to see. I mean, that's not going to cover it, but, right? It would be very good to know.
I think it's probably an apt time, but as a preview to the next hour, if the committee's consensus lands there, that's something we could have ready for Monday night.
Awesome.
If the committee lands there, that's, we're not.
Don't jinx it, Tom.
With
We,
crystal ball.
in the second tab is just the details of the grants that were awarded or that were approved last year are in place this year, both as a look back. And then the next one is, what has it been for the last 5 years? Just so you have it.
Right.
Let me go next to the policy.
I think it might be helpful also to just
Yeah.
highlight, even on during the grant presentations last year, some of the conversation around it was, even though we have X amount to allocate, are some of these still applicable, right? Are they still the right way to spend? Like, just because we have the money, it doesn't mean you just say yes. And so I think that, having seen how that process went last year, and how thoughtful and intentional that committee was about being good stewards of those funds, I think I feel really comfortable with how this fits, because we're not just saying, the money's there, go for it. There's a rubric, there's a process for how those grants are assessed, and so it's not like, oh, let's just take away. So just wanted to highlight that quickly.
And we are incredibly fortunate for how large that fund has gotten, the $1.2 million. And you're right, it's to a point where we need to continue to be thoughtful in a different way. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
is there someplace I can find where the amount sits in total and?
Yeah.
And then,
The current balance or historical?
well, yeah, because in the policy it says reasonably anticipate to be available. I'm just curious how that number is determined. Is it interest that it's been,
It's all interest.
So I could answer that in broad strokes. It's on the monthly report that I provide as a balance for the revolving funds. It's near the bottom of that. It's married with the available balance in the stabilization fund and the special education fund. And it's called FEFI's distribution, but it's on that list of monthly reports. No, it doesn't really change from one year to the next because we draw off it, obviously, to fund the types of things that exist each year.
but you just said, I guess the reason why I asked is you said it's growing, so is it, we're not, we're.
You mean the
we're
distribution's
less than
growing?
interest bearing is giving us?
Yes.
Yes, so we don't control that. We don't control that. That's controlled by a set of trustees that control the FEFI's fund. We get a disbursement letter that says you may expect X amount of dollars, of which about 1.5% must come off the top from Manning Fund.
Who are they?
Who are,
Which residents, is that who's on this FE's board?
Duffy's.
the FEFI's trustees are a variety of people. Most of them, I think, are Ipswich residents, but there's
Elected
also.
or
Appointed.
appointed by the select board?
Yes.
And us, there's in our policy, but
They
they
come
have,
from different
yeah,
areas of
they have
appointment.
bylaws, and I'm looking, I think you're asking, yeah, you track what the district has used of the allocation. I think were you
I'm asking
asking
a
about?
broader question, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
like,
'cause-
how is it,
was it, yeah, I mean,
You
if
know what,
it's,
it might be, since you're gonna be doing this role this year, and not to,
Yeah.
this is all really important, but it might be helpful to sit with Tom and with Peter
Okay.
Genalvi, who chairs that,
Paying
the
committee.
paying committee, the paying grant committee, and kind of do like a.
yeah, I know you're trying to move the meeting along.
Yeah,
No,
No, but it's, I mean, not just to move the meeting along, but because they're important questions, and for
Yeah.
you to get a thorough response and understanding, especially coming into you or taking that seat.
Yeah.
That would probably be helpful.
Yeah,
Didn't
because.
I think the chair of the trustees and the treasurer came to this meeting in
yes,
Yeah,
June?
that's
They
what I
did
was
a
going to
pre-
say. I
yeah.
think if you
They
want to
came and
connect
reported
with,
to the school committee last June.
I'm
We
looking,
talk about opening the aperture and, you know, and maybe enhancing beyond just the traditional, and the fund is growing, and it just seems maybe there's an opportunity for a more expansive use of the fund that we haven't thought of before. I think that's where my
Yeah.
mind started to go. a
you
little
want to
bit.
know, like, big picture, how big the corpus, I believe they call it, is growing.
Well, yeah, because if it keeps growing and growing and growing, and,
Yeah.
and we're being hyper-conservative with it, I don't want to draw it down so there's a cliff somewhere in 30 years, but growing it and growing it and growing it, if it's exceeding inflation, then maybe we have to take a look at, is there more out there that we can use it against?
Yeah,
It goes back to, if we're under budget constraints, and we're trying to depressurize the system, maybe there's a way that we can be creative with the fund, within the limits of what it's legally designed to do.
And I know that, Paul, you have researched this a little bit, but you'll look at things like, so it was a land trust that was sold in 2012. It was organized to be the new Feffes because
Yeah, actually, I was just
the
reviewing. the
prior
lawsuit
Feffes, so
against it
that,
right there.
yeah, so that was the lawsuit. So what I do know about numbers quickly is that it started out at about $22 million, and it's now somewhere in the $40 million range.
47.
$47 million, and that's the $1.2 million in interest that we're getting for the distribution.
My point is it was $22 million in 12, $47 million equivalent in 26. And if it's not, I mean, we're growing a fund, and it seems like there's more interest bearing that we could be utilizing, if there's proposals to be able to utilize it.
Yeah.
Not touch the principles and keep
Yeah.
growing it, right?
Yeah.
But if it's grown beyond what inflation would have dictated, the 20, they settled for 29, but they had to pay out 7, so you're right, it's somewhere in there. Is there an opportunity to utilize more of it and not adversely impact the bottom line of the fund?
So I just forwarded you the email that the chair of the FEFIs sent to us
Okay.
with the distribution this year and the current total. I think you have really good questions. I know, I don't want to speak for them, but they have a good process for how they come up with what the right allocation is, but I think to answer your question specific, it's that group that manages the money. We're the beneficiaries, they're the trustees.
Yeah, I don't doubt that they're consummate professionals.
Yeah, no, but you have great questions. I don't think any of us can answer them, but hopefully that email kind of gets you started down the right path. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
there's a lot of
no,
great
it's
ideas.
important. So I'll direct you to the policy. Start at the top, which is what I showed on the previous page, which is 3 categories. Pain and twig persist. Ongoing programmatic enrichments is what we called it carve out, literally with quotes last year. I just gave it a formal name, and then the 3rd category is ongoing instructional. Those are the 3 categories. And then outlined here, you see in these next 3 paragraphs, what they look like. Essentially, it's the way that I described it. So the pain and twig, it's the exact language that was in there. It's green because I moved it to reorganize, but described it the same way. Ongoing programmatic enrichment, annual distribution for repeatedly funded, regularly run in the district. So the historic piece is important there. We're not adding something new. Anything new would still go through the grant, and then we would add it in here if we decided that it should be going, or after it's multiple years and we felt like it should continue to go. I think, Jenny, to your question,
That's
maybe
where
where
that could go.
Yeah,
The
that's right.
numbers, whatever we decide how many years is repeatedly.
Yep, if we felt like it should go there. I'm going to come back to that in just one second.
Okay.
And then the third, the description for ongoing instructional, the distinction between programmatic, you think about a one-time event, like a one-time-a-year event, like a field trip or college boot camp, versus instructional, it's throughout the year for our students. Think about things that are happening in the classroom for them, right, as an example. I like where you're going with now Jenny, just back to the timing.
Yeah.
The only reason I didn't include that, or not that I didn't, now that as I think about it is, there's a couple times we've talked about it benefits us now to be, initially when we're putting some of these things in place, to be a little bit broad, as opposed to, so that we can figure out for the first few years and give ourselves the leeway, and then go through it a couple years to say what feels right is to say 3 years or 5 years, as opposed to make the change and immediately put those guardrails in. I'm not opposed to them.
No, I think
This gives us the flexibility to
Yeah.
figure out what's right after we've gone through it for a year or two. That is usually Matt's guidance. I don't deserve credit for that one, but that feels like it's worked for us, and I would suggest that here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, at the risk of belaboring the point, I just want to phrase it a different way, if we're saying the same thing. Essentially, there would be nothing in the ongoing programmatic enrichment bucket or the ongoing instructional enrichment bucket that hadn't gone through the grant first. Are we saying that?
Except for the
No.
theater.
We're saying
and-
the opposite of that,
I
where
think
we,
bucket
there would be
two,
some
yes.
discretion.
Bucket 3 is discretion. That's what we're looking
Yeah.
for. Treating it almost mechanically like a revolving fund,
Okay.
right? Does that make sense? Kind of looking at, like how we said, oh, instead of sub-varsity coaches, here, let's fund it through that. Is
Okay.
there opportunity now that we have this growing distribution to
Yep.
reevaluate how we use it? Can we use it for things that, I mean, maybe had we had this money 12 years ago, that these decisions would have been made, but we're just now at a time that,
So yeah, so bucket 3, right, is
Bucket three.
has not gone through the pain
not necessarily.
cycle, or the,
Yeah.
not necessarily. So with you have to go through
Some have.
pain or twig first, and then maybe eventually you'll go into the second bucket, the carve-out category, if it's been going on for a few years. But the third, okay.
It's not, that's not, none of that is written here.
No, but I mean, that's what
That's,
that.
I think that's sort of the idea of like, that's for us for a discussion to say either to put into policy or each year for us to discuss and say, if we felt like we were going to put, I don't know, photography in that third bucket, it didn't go through a grant, originally, how do we feel about it? There are other ones that did go through a grant several years ago, and we might say that one also should, and so I'm trying to be intentional of let's have the conversation and not be restricted to what's on the page,
Yep.
so that we as a body can agree it's what's appropriate and in the spirit of the trust.
I think it's important to have the distinction because the health standards last year was a really good example of that, where the standards came down and we need to meet the standards. And because it was like, obviously there were other budgetary constraints, and it was like, how do we make this fit as sort of, I don't want to call it a knee-jerk thing, because obviously the curriculum committee had already done what they needed to do to get us to that point, but before it came to us, we didn't have visibility into that or whatever. So I think when those kinds of things are, and that's going to happen, that's the nature of like, that's their job, it's not our job, you know, and so I think like knowing that there's going to be some rhythm around those kinds of things and having a place where we can respond to it in a way that's not, oh, that's got to go to a grant now because we don't have enough wiggle room, that's why this is necessary. So.
So if I could just add to that, I couldn't agree more, and when Sasha and I talked about this, that's an example that we landed on, because that's a perfect example of, and I think that's one of the things that has prompted the need this year to support next year to have exactly that conversation. And I would agree, it wasn't necessarily knee-jerk, because it was a necessity in real time that we were looking at opportunities or resources to fund. But I think one of the guiding lights that we have now in looking forward, and looking at the third category that Sasha's referring to about ongoing enrichment, could be what is supplemental to the budget that, for example, in dire times, what might be some of the things that are not mandated that might be on the cut list because they're not mandated, required pieces of curriculum driven by state or federal, expectation? What are the type of things that we as a community, value, that people expect, but are not necessarily mandated, that we could consider with an honest-to-goodness, authentic approach to be, ongoing enrichment? Things we value, but potentially could hit a reduction list if we didn't have a safety net.
I think the way I see this is kind of a recentering. You know how when you're on your navigation and you go off the path and you have to hit recenter? Because that happens to me all the time. I was a member of the Payne Grant Committee as a community member before I was on school committee. And it's kind of, the grants that come before you, you're like, oh, does this really fall under innovation? And then I think the health standards are a perfect example, and I was vocal about that last year and this year. State standards should not be funded as innovation through a Payne grant. And we fell into that. I think this is our chance to recenter and say, what do we value? Let's fund what we value through innovation grants. And the appropriated budget should be funding standards and curriculum and what we should be funding, and FEFI should be funding innovation and the cherry on top of what we want to deliver.
Other notes that I'll add that are in the top of the next page. The first is that we would discuss this during the regular budget cycle. It's not set in perpetuity. And then the second is if we don't know the amount of the distribution, we would start with the assumption of last year's number and then adjust if we did get it. So if we didn't know from the FEFIs that this year we're going to get 1.2 million, we would say, well, we know we got 1 million last year, start with that as your baseline assumption, and then adjust once we know the number. So at least it allows us to get started.
So,
A little bit of what happened with our Chapter 70 money that we decided this year is don't wait and assume you're getting nothing. Go off your latest, best information.
I had a question about that, because they have to give us a projection. So I guess they give us the projection, and they give us the final, and it's all in our policy and their policy. So in what situation would we not know?
This is the timing of the budget cycle. In my 2 first years here, we didn't get the projection from the trustees until like March, whereas we got it in like November this year.
Okay.
Or maybe it didn't come to me until like March.
Oh, okay.
Just in full disclosure, yeah. I don't know who got what when, so I'm not trying to
Okay.
pretend I do know that, but
Okay,
that's the
fine.
timing
Okay,
thing. If
that's
we don't know in the fall, we should just use
Okay.
the best reliable information to move forward.
Okay, then that makes sense.
The other items in here are just the strikeout was the adjustment because I moved it up. And at the very bottom, Paul, this might be helpful, just what you're talking about is the actual trust order. We included the link at the bottom just to, for continuity between the two, if that's helpful. Any other questions about what's the additions, these 6-ish paragraphs that are in here? Comments? Yeah.
I know it says like, oh, we'll evaluate every budget cycle. I think what might make me feel more comfortable, and maybe this is when we're like, oh, should we put this in, should we not? If we explicitly call out that we will, this is not going to sound nice, but like we will ensure that whatever's getting funded, meets the criteria of enrichment and enhancement. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do. You want to suggest a sentence here or add it yourself? Or
I can. I might just have to think about how I want to word it, but yes,
Okay.
I'm happy to do
The
that.
goal is to try to vote on this tonight, is that right?
should we?
Potential or
Okay.
we could, we're meeting twice next week, we could move it to Monday if we wanted to, but if we go that route, if we want to like sit and make sure the wording is okay, I think if we come to a general like straw poll consensus of this is the direction we want to go in, hopefully that's enough for, you to say, okay, I can show what that would look like.
Yes. The only thing, if we're good with everything that's in there, minus or with that one addition, let's make the addition.
I hope this
Word
doesn't feel
expeditious.
semantic. It feels like, in my mind, it feels like making some kind of, I just dropped a comment in on the ongoing programmatic enrichment versus ongoing instructional enrichment. I feel like we have to tease that out just a little more, because I feel like there could be some gray areas there, where we're saying, I don't know, for example, hang on, let me go back.
Are you talking about just the label or the
Yes.
description of them?
Both,
Okay.
either, or what I think maybe the label doesn't matter so much if the description is a little more. Let me just give, this is totally off the cuff example, but I'm looking at the slide deck presentation where like we've got STEM and ongoing instructional, and we've got professional development in the ongoing programmatic. Like, so if a teacher wants to attend STEM professional development, that, you know what I mean? It's like, that feels like it could be semantic, but or a gray area or whatever, but that if what we're saying is bucket 3 is separate versus bucket 2 maybe flows through bucket 1, then would we say, oh, that's got to go to the grant first, versus saying, you know what I mean? I think like just being really clear about what is programmatic versus
Okay.
what is instructional might matter later.
The one piece that's in the ongoing instructional is direct educational experiences to students.
Okay,
So I think that covers that one part, again, if we agree with it, that covers the one part about like, at least what does that mean?
yeah.
The programmatic is enrichment projects rarely for the district, because one of the ones that we have regularly funded that is in there is professional development and place-based learning, so that one is broader, which is why I wrote it that way. So I see where you're going. Thoughts on the instructional feels specific enough? Would you adjust the programmatic? Thoughts on those two? I'm open to it. I'm looking for maybe what you might suggest.
Yeah. Let me just think what if other people have things they want to talk about. Sorry, I don't want to hold
Absolutely.
this up.
We're going to watch. Hear
Yeah,
what you think.
just,
Ooh,
they're spinning in there.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Others?
Are you sorry, are you going to go back to adding what Jenny was saying before too about specific language in the first paragraph here, the description for timing?
Well, you mean like how, when I was like, it's repeatedly? That's what Sasha was saying, that give this a couple years for us to really figure out what we think that number might be, the amount of,
Oh, yeah, okay.
That would be my suggestion. It's always going to come here.
yeah.
Let's run it for a few years to figure out what feels right, or should it just always come, like, give us the flexibility because it's new?
Right.
That was my
Well,
recommendation.
I think that makes
We
sense,
can
but I
put
think
in,
eventually there should be, just so it's not like, oh, well, 2 years or versus 5 years, like, what's
we
the,
learn more and then we update.
yeah.
I like that.
So Haley, what word, if you're looking at ongoing programmatic enrichment, what word don't you like? The ongoing or the programmatic?
No, it's not, I mean, especially now that you've drawn our attention to that distinction there, direct educational. I mean, that does make the distinction. So I guess what I'm trying to think, this is hard to say, right? And maybe, I mean, it's also, this doesn't have to be 100% set in stone. I think it's the same, if we need to come back to it. If this goes into policy, it's gonna be reviewed. So if we need to tweak it later, we can tweak it later, where, we go through this for however many years, and then we say, this is a great example of why this might still feel like a gray area. This is how we need to adjust for it. I feel like I don't know what I don't know yet. So it feels like there could be things that come up, but I don't know that I have great, other than that one example I just gave, but, so I think it's okay. It's not that I don't like it, it's that I just have some concerns but we don't have a crystal ball. So I think it's fine, and that distinction, that language there, the direct educational experience is
Yeah,
kind of what I was
Can I-
driving at, so.
okay.
Can I just say something about that line? And I know we talked about this when we were,
Which line is that, the direct?
the programs that provide direct educational experiences to students, including but not limited to, and I know we have not limited to, but I do think we have to put athletics in there.
Yeah.
Because arts encompasses music, theater. And I know STEM encompasses a lot, but this has been an ongoing conversation about, like, I don't think we can leave it out.
Yeah, I think it's part of the enrichment of the students, and
I think it's a example list. I think some art could qualify for that, bucket 3. Your core art teacher is not likely gonna, so just similar to athletics, there's a lot that if we have to have, by our definitions of have to have, then no, but if there's enrichment or enhancement of athletics, perhaps, again, it's kind of, we're trying to set something, like a direction where we'll probably be able to hone in on the details after year 1, year 2, year 3. So I don't know. I don't
harm
feel
in putting
either way.
athletics in.
Yeah, I think it's, well, because to the point you made before, if there are lots of things that I don't know how you articulated it, but it landed when you said it before, like things that we aren't required to offer
Yes.
that really do, that are athletic, but they fall into enrichment. Like, I think just adding it makes it a more robust list. That presumably anything that we are funding or that doesn't fall into that bucket as an enrichment athletic piece, we wouldn't be discussing. Or that would
Be in
come
there.
up when we
Yeah.
discuss it, and you know what I mean,
If-
like,
If we included athletics, just like anything else here, it would not change the way that, as it's written, it would not change how we would allocate to this category. What it would, it is also like including but not limited to. But what it would mean is the way that Tom might earmark certain line items in the budget, as he has now with, again, with like the athletics or school choice funds, where he goes through the budget and earmarks, that's how we're using those revolving accounts. It would, if we were to fund something athletics, it would be the same thing. And to Diana's point, the language is it's including but not limited to. So like, sure, that's on the table for us. There are two distinct things though. How much money do we put in this category, and then what do we earmark in the budget?
You're saying there's already a way to help with the cost of the athletics? Is that what you're saying? There's like already that,
Well, because we do have that, no, you could use this for athletics, I'm fine with that. I'm just pointing out the difference in mechanics of what do we identify as how much money do we put in this category?
right?
And then how is that money distributed across the budget? Those are the two things. So either way, we could spread that money across.
So,
What's the feeling about athletics? I don't have a strong.
So this is a moment in time, and future school committees, whether we review this in a few years or another group reviews this in a few years, I don't want athletics to be forgotten. In the past 2 years, I've had conversations with Dr. Blake about basically, we have this wonderful arts program that repetitively applies for Payne and Twig grants. And they get fulfilled. And we have a wonderful arts program. That has not been the case for athletics, and the conversation that I had basically was that, and Dr. Blake said this, you could strip away athletics from our high school and we would not be in compliant with DESI.
What about,
We would be.
We would what?
Well, we would not be. You can take away varsity
You
teams.
had a double negative. Yes, I think you said the same thing.
Okay. I didn't mean to have a double negative. You could take away
yeah,
all varsity teams or anything athletic, and we would not be in compliant.
In compliance.
Would be
Yes,
in,
it
we
doesn't
would
make
still
any-
be
yeah.
in compliance.
Correct, we would still be in compliance. We would still be compliant.
Right.
We would still be compliant.
Yes.
We would not be in compliance.
That's right.
Both are correct.
Should we type it out? Who's a visual learner?
No, but I,
Compliance
So-
is
You-
roughly.
I 100% agree with you.
Yes.
I mean, it's.
So by definition, athletics are enrichment. And, which seems sad, but that's by definition,
we
that's the case. So let me finish, please.
Yeah.
So historically, since I've been very active in the schools and on school committee, I have seen that we have not enriched our athletic department. I do not want athletics to be forgotten by school committees of the future. And I feel like even though we have including but not limited to, I don't know that there's harm in having it there.
We could do two
Comfortable adding
things.
it.
We could just take out the including but not limited to if the examples feel like it's restrictive, and just say direct educational experiences to students, and just leave it at that.
But in your
Or you
chart,
could,
your PowerPoint slide, right before, enrichment, and to your point, it's got everything other than athletics. And so arts, music, theater, STEM, it needs to have athletics in there too, because I agree, if you don't have it, it implies that it's not as important. And so I think there's a tacit implication built into this that athletics aren't enhancing.
yeah, so I'm suggesting one of two things. One is take away all the examples, so don't list arts, music, theater, and just say experiences for students and leave it at that. Or arts, music, theater, STEM, or you could just go STEAM and leave those off. You could say STEAM and athletics.
I think
Is
list
there
it
a
out.
preference? You like the listing it out?
Yeah, because I think your list here, arts, music, theater, STEM, are all components of what makes Ipswich special. And so does athletics. And so I think if you spell it out verbatim, it forces people to remember that they're enhancing and critical part of the school district as well.
I would agree from the administrative end, having the examples is very helpful for future readers of this. If you wanted to reduce the words, you could call art, music, theater, the performing arts,
Right, or fine arts, or whatever you call it, yeah.
performing fine arts.
Performing
I mean, you could go
Fine arts,
STEAM and it covers those. I was just,
Yep.
to your point, trying to illustrate what it would look like, so I don't mind.
Yeah, but we have STEM, which isn't arts. STEAM is not on there.
That's what I'm saying, you would replace arts, music, theater, and STEM with just STEAM.
Oh,
The A
The A
is
is
arts.
Right.
Yes, you could say, do that too. I mean, so many options.
Third option up there?
Oh,
I like spelling them out.
No, that's what I'm
Because
suggesting.
then you're not debating over words or acronyms or
It's
meaning.
be
It just
helpful
is
for
right there.
future readers.
Yeah, future readers.
How does this version feel? We're just added, all right, I'm seeing yeses. Okay, cool. Let me go back to, all right, so Haley, your comment there.
delete it.
Diana, what was your,
It was a little below where you were.
the language on the,
Just added a comment because it wouldn't show an edit within an edit. Again, it's, might not be the most eloquently
do
worded.
you mind reading it? It's just hard for me to see on that side of the,
The draft.
That's where I'm at. I'm just not seeing that version.
Any,
This one.
do you want me to read it to you, or you got it?
Okay.
The,
Yeah,
oh, no,
was-
sorry. No, it's the policy.
you want to just drop it in the document?
Yeah, I can, I just wanted to call out where it was, because
Yeah.
it's gonna show probably as the same color.
the same one.
Any budget
The,
components being funded through
numbered
FEFI's
bullets
distributions
aren't
shall
in
be
there, so
approved by
I
the
must
school
not be
committee
getting
as
refreshed.
qualifying. Oh, yeah, all right, your point, it needs to be enrichment or advancement, yep.
So that, I guess, if we use the word approved, that does say, I don't know, do we have, you were talking about process, Haley, like, do we need to have a vote or some, where we say, like, I think if we use the example of revolving funds, like you have your, I don't know if it's a code of ethics or whatever, you have to
Yep.
do what you need to do. This kind of puts the onus, if we're funding something through this money, that we need to acknowledge, like, we are putting our stamp of approval, this is enrichment and enhancement.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I remember now, I had it here and it just felt repetitive to say it 3 times. But you're right, it's a loss if we don't have that in there, so I like that addition.
And mechanically, how that would
Allocation.
appear, at least in the budget format that we've been using in my time, as in if you have the budget in your, in our mind's eye, the columns in the far right are the supplemental sources. So on the far right line, we would say, you know, FE's ongoing, whatever we call it, but it would be noted both in dollar amount and in the
Yeah.
title of the offset.
So that actually, so I guess if we approved the budget, that would imply that we are,
It would.
because
I
the
mean,
budget.
sort of, there's an ipso facto, I guess, but we can certainly make sure for the first several years, or every year, that it's called out
Yeah.
specifically somehow, but for the purposes of the budget that we need to manage, once approved, I would certainly want it to appear there.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, the school committee can certainly call it out specifically, sure.
I'm sorry, I think I missed part of that because we were trying to figure out, Paul doesn't have like a live document.
I get it now.
access.
I'm good.
Okay. The mechanics of it, so we wouldn't know what our distribution is. I think this is what you just said, so sorry if you're repeating it, that we wouldn't know what our distribution is until after we've approved the budget, right? Or when do you find out, like, what that pot, when do we find out what that pot is gonna be?
Well, this year it was in November, was it, or October?
January. I thought we knew before.
Yeah, it says in
email was
the thing, November, and then April is kind of a,
Correct.
If we did, what's noted in here below is if we don't know, we would start with the assumption of last year's number. So at least we could begin the discussion and talk about
So we'd at least
approximately
have
what
a
should the
floor.
percentages
We'd have a
be and then
floor.
adjust. Yeah. Because we do anticipate that might happen.
Okay.
And then, so I think it, again, it's going to be kind of learning in real time. We're catching up this year if we go through with it. If we do go with this next year, it probably would be like an ongoing conversation, like that we would have to, currently, we say, how much do we want to allocate to Payne and Twig? Now, instead of just doing those two, we'll have, well, I guess technically 4 buckets that we would be splitting. So yeah, we'll have presumably a number or a potential number, but then as the budget's getting built, just like Tom said, this is kind of what you missed, like Tom saying that he earmarks, you know, the offsets, what's going in revolving and whatever, we would have column, that noted in that last column there. That would let us know, we're calling this enrichment enhancement, and we can have a discussion, make sure it is.
Does it say, pardon me if I missed it in here, but the communication between the school committee and the district in terms of, for the staff, the teachers who are looking to put in a Payne request or Twig request, how much is available to them? Is there like a procedure here that we say, you know, this is what we have, because it's going to be different?
That's a good question.
Because now we're going to have 3
Yeah.
buckets. It's not all going to be,
How's it done now? Because even now, or now, the number changes every year. And so each year we would have, we currently do and have communicated that. Does anyone know what that normal cycle is? Because it would remain the same. I just don't know the details of it off the top of my head.
Yeah,
Because we're doing that now.
Right.
To your point. The number might be different, but
well, I was going to say, this would be considerably different, right? If we have the
could
3
be,
different
yeah.
buckets.
What's the timing now where we communicate the dollar amounts? Do you know, Tom?
Yeah, so, right now, it's very straightforward, pretty much, you know, mathematically, that we get the allocation from the FE's trustees, and they give us a specific number of which we take off the top what the Manning Fund is, about 1.5%, 1.6%. And then the difference between those two numbers, we split 75, 25, 75% for Payne grants, 25% for both rounds of the Twig grants. So that number has already been shared, although the committees aren't necessarily formed and they've not met yet. The applications are still coming in. So I don't know that, you know, grant, you know, writers have ever had in their mind ahead of time, oh, I'm going to be applying against a pool of $100,000. I'm not sure that actually matters either. If someone has a good idea, they should put in a grant, and the job of the grant committee is to decide from the available money that they know is available, what to fund and what not to fund. I don't think the grant writers know ahead of time, and nor I think do they need to.
We're saying we don't share the
Okay.
distribution
All right,
with the grant writers, so
Yeah.
they don't normally know.
right. And they'll be aware that there's, if this is approved, that there's going to be a change, and,
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, going through this, there's actually been more discussion about it, might increase visibility to what that might look like.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Other thoughts? How are you feeling about it?
I think it's great. You know, there's been a lot of discussion, at least that I've heard, about why can't we use the FEFI's money for different things, like, that we need help with, and then this is great.
Yeah. I
I'm
think this
excited
creates the
about it.
opportunity for us to do that. I totally agree. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
Again, big picture, certainly, like, we have to be mindful of the direction of the trust, but ultimately, we are the beneficiaries, the school committee is the beneficiaries of that.
I did do some quick math. It's 22 million back then, or whatever it was, is 37 million in today's dollars. So fund is turning a pretty good profit.
Yeah,
did you want to show us on the override calculator, the different things?
We can, I maybe
Oh.
close out policy.
Okay.
I guess the question is, what are people feeling? Do we want to, clear all these comments and vote on it and wrap it up? Do people want to wait until Monday to have, take some more time, see if there's anything else we want to discuss Monday?
So,
Go ahead.
one thing that kind of was a light bulb that went off in my mind when we were talking about this at Budget Subcommittee is something I think is important to share before we vote on a policy. And it took me a while to understand, and again, this is like Jen's night of being slow on the uptake, I guess, but it was an important distinction. So it feels like if we use the example of putting 500 in the bucket to put into the budget, it doesn't mean that we then don't need the cuts to get to our percentage that we need. So for an example, we vote on this policy, and if the amount is, dictated by Budget Subcommittee and Superintendent and Tom, that, that amount is 500,000. It doesn't say, oh, now we have 500,000, now we can put back our gym teacher, or put back whatever that thing is. It's still, we have to get to that percentage, and the additional FEFI's money put into the budget helps prolong an override and helps us fund what we value within the budget that is an enhancement, but it doesn't mean that we get to not cut. And it took me a while to get to
distinction.
that.
Yeah, it's an important point. And this, I think, Jenny, maybe I didn't pick up where you were going, was if I go back to the override calculator,
Yes, right.
what was a need for a $16 million override, if we assumed 500,000, and we bring that in even without escalating it, it brings that 16 down to $11 million. Now, clearly still work to do, but if that takes away a third of it, that's a significant benefit to us. It benefits us in future, it benefits us in bringing down the override number. It's less about the individual line items. Yeah, that's right. And that's a big shift. So my point of when we left this, and I said there's more we're getting after to bring that number down, this is one of those examples.
And
One of the ways. Yeah, this is one of the ways we significantly bring down the amount of future overrides.
so just visually now, if you plug in instead of,
I used 500,000 as the example.
no, I like that. So I think this will illustrate Jen's point. So you offset the 500,000. If you bring that, what do you have it, 3%, bring that up to 4.5, which is level set, which is no cuts? That'll illustrate what you were saying, Jen.
27 million.
Okay, so it's both.
Correct.
I just want to, so everybody, like you said, on the same page, it's not found money. We are looking down the road, and there's a lot of work to do. This is some initial steps, but we're going to have to get creative. We're going to have to get comfortable with whatever we go in specifics, but we're going to need to look at both reductions and ways to offset the budget.
And what Sasha's showing us is big picture in years future, but for the process that we're in right now, if this is voted on by the school committee, what this means for next week is that we still have to decide what cuts we want.
It's the same
Based on what,
conversation.
it's the same conversation. Yes, it's the same conversation. But with a longer projection of needing less, but still
Yeah.
operating under a deficit.
Yeah, it reduces
All
the
things.
amount we need to take from stabilization for this year. Yep.
Thank you for bringing that up. I think that's a really,
Yeah.
Yeah,
because it can be, certainly it's confusing, especially, for people to hear this and then say, well, why not this? But you can see where, 11, where it says projected shortfall, like, we're already having to dip in there. We're already having to dip in there, so it's just, we'd have to dip in there less.
That's right.
But we're still having to
lot less.
go
That's right.
to the, yeah. So, thank you, Jen, for bringing that up.
And we're still funding what we value through enrichment in our budget.
Absolutely.
Okay, so back to the question about how do we want to proceed? I think, Haley, you were going to say something.
I mean, I feel comfortable with if we change these last few markups and get it going. I would love to, it sounds like everyone's giving overwhelming positive response, and if we can incorporate this into conversations on Monday and Thursday, with the caveats that have been given, I understand. I still feel like it would be valuable to have it there to bring it all forth.
And I guess, technically speaking, we could vote on it tonight if somebody over the weekend is like, shoot, I want this. Like, it's very, I mean, we have to get it on an agenda, but it's very easy to, make tweaks to policy. We can always make updates to policies.
I just have a sentence, like a change.
Yeah, let's do it.
Where it's, the William Payne and enhancement grants, all those three paragraphs right
Yes.
there. If instead of starting with the school committee may, can you put the definition of it first? Just so where it says like instruction, ongoing instructional enrichment is educational experiences to students, and then underneath that, say the school committee.
I don't know where you are, Jenny.
Yeah,
Where are
put
you?
your cursor. Are you in the document?
I got
Yeah.
it. I just
Yeah,
cursored it.
exactly, that's where I am.
You want to
So I'm just saying, put the.
describe it and then say what
Put
you
the
would do with it?
definition of it first, and then the second sentence have the school committee may. So,
I understand what you're saying.
Somebody else
I had
see
it
what I'm saying?
just in the summary reading, there's three things. Now let me tell you the detail of the three things. That's why I did that.
No, that's exact-
Number one, and then detail number two, and detail number three.
no, I'm just saying, so where it says, for the second one, ongoing programmatic enrichment,
Yeah,
say it supports
this.
ongoing enrichment projects, define it first, and then say what the school committee may do.
So flip those two
Just switch 'em.
statements.
I guess you would
Just
have
the
to rework the
definition
whole thing.
first.
If you put
Oh,
the definition first, then what would you, then you'd be like, the school committee can do this? Like, how would you then qualify it to the school committee? So I get what you're saying, but I just don't,
I'm just thinking readability, it
so
might
in
be
the
easier to
up
define it.
above, it says shall determine the distributions to be allocated amongst the three categories. So you're saying distribution there, so you could just take out the school committee may allocate a portion. That's in all three, you could just take that out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's perfect.
Oh, good.
So you do that for the third bucket too
Yeah.
then,
I just think it's,
or all three.
then it's just the descriptions of them.
The next one.
Trying to race me?
Racing.
I think we got it.
I'm with Haley, I am really excited about this.
You want me to make a motion?
no,
No.
yes, but I just want to add that we so just process again. If we vote this now and it passes, this then directs us, the dollar amount allocated should be established by vote of the school committee. we're- So we'll then, so that's to follow, and I don't
Yeah, I mean,
know
could
that
do
we called that out for this meeting, so we could have that. I guess what I would propose is, again, if we do vote to support it, that we have that conversation Monday, but maybe straw poll wise, we can give some direction to Tom unofficially. Be prepared for Monday, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, if
That's the first tab, or
we have
at
some
least
more
an
energy in you,
example.
we could do that right now, too. So
Well,
let's close out the
could we,
first
though?
one.
Because we have it, I'm just, again,
Yeah,
want
yeah,
to make
let's-
sure we stick to the agenda that we're talking about,
Close
the
out this.
policy.
I move to approve the revisions to policy DDA, FEFI's distribution as reviewed.
Second.
Okay, moved by Sasha, second by Haley. Further discussion? All in favor? Motion passes.
So I just want to close that while we're on it. So you're saying you want to take a second on what we believe the dollar amount is, but you're proposing discuss but not vote?
Yes, I think we should post it for Monday and officially vote it
Okay.
Monday, but I think we can, if we all seem like we're in general agreement, then again, just gives Tom the opportunity to earmark in that last column, like we talked about, what would potentially apply, and then we can really move the conversation along Monday.
Yeah,
And even if it's a consensus or a direction,
That's
just,
what I mean.
looking at this, right, just to cut right to the chase, the number that I need is the bucket number 3.
yeah.
In the example of the slides that are in front of us, the 550,000. That's the number that I need, because that's what needs to be set aside from the existing budget that you have in front of you
Right.
and offset with an amount. The other, the place-based learning and professional development and college boot camp, those are round enough figures based on FY '26 spending. And that's kind of about what we've been spending on field trips and PD for the last few years anyways. But the number that's really going to be movable each year is going to be the 550 in the example in front of us.
Want to use what's here as at least the starting point for us to consider. We can continue with, base it off of these numbers on Monday. And Tom, you could use that 550 directionally to start to earmark. How do people feel about that as a
Yeah,
suggestion?
I think that's good. Is it, could you earmark like more than that amount, just so we can see what could possibly go into that bucket? Or just like highlight
You
them?
mean, could we ascertain what else might fall into this category?
Yes, thank you.
Regardless of the dollar amount?
Yeah, I'm just curious to see how much,
There's,
That's a bigger lift for Monday.
Oh,
but-
that's
But no,
fine.
I'm just
There's
saying,
more than-
it's not,
yes.
We're just
We're not-
occupying your whole weekend.
Because, I mean, Tom, we're
And I
not
don't mean
going
it
to
that way.
cover
I'm just
that. We're
saying
not
that
gonna
that's-
cover that amount. We're not gonna cover that amount to this year.
Correct.
But I'm
And
just
perhaps
curious.
never,
It
but
doesn't
yeah.
have to be for Monday, but I'm just curious, like, at some point to know what would fall in that
based,
third bucket.
based on these categories, it could potentially be millions.
It could.
So if you took that from 500 to 6 to 7, you're never going to get, you're still not at a point where like, we don't have enough things to apply it to.
Sure.
If that's the intention of where you're going. Yeah, it's not going to be hard to find places to put
Oh,
that
no.
550.
Correct.
Oh, I
That
agree with that.
category,
Yeah.
if that category existed in and of itself, it would exceed $1.2 million.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And then you'd have nothing, then I don't mean you, then we would have nothing for Payne, Twig, or the other items.
Okay, all right, that's good to know.
Should we discuss at all, in the pain category, there was another category because for 2 years we have a health teacher
Yeah, yep. Sorry, keep going.
and a dance teacher, which I think we've all agreed. I shouldn't say that. I think we all know the history of the health teacher being put in there. So there's money already earmarked for the next 2 years that would fall under that 250,000 for the dance teacher and the health teacher that were approved last year. And is it worth getting specific about, I feel like it's just moving things around, but in the spirit of enrichment and enhancement, you take that health teacher, add it into our budget, our appropriated budget. Tom, I don't know even how to say this, but
I know where you're going, though, I think.
Put that there, put something else there.
Correct.
Yeah.
yes, so that appropriately the teacher teaching the standard is no longer in this budget.
And I think to your phrase earlier, Jen, that would be how we could, reset or restart.
Yeah, right.
whatever the-
Recenter.
Recenter, thank you. And that could be an example of that it would be offset probably under the 550 category by taking something that is a performing art function, calling it an ongoing enrichment piece.
Oh, I
What
see.
what was the other one?
Putting
Dance
putting
teacher.
dance there and
the-
health.
No,
there.
I would, well,
The issue with that,
I think dance clearly is a good example of ongoing enrichment. It's
Right.
not a mandated program by any stretch.
in the current,
Putting health into the appropriated budget certainly meets that standard.
budget, you're assuming that the funding for both of those come from a second year of pain.
Correct, yes.
Doing it that way, what you're suggesting would increase the budget as we've seen it.
Unless you
Oh, no,
changed the allocations for those buckets. I think this is I think, again, like directionally, if the committee's like, yes, I think you brought it up, you brought it about the health teacher, how that feels extra funny now that we've kind of defined these. If the committee's like, let's take a look at that, I think it sounds like you have some ideas, maybe we can talk about it more at like a budget subcommittee.
Okay.
Yeah,
I-
this is like moving us towards, and then we
Right.
can talk about it
Yeah.
more.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing that, and then I think the other thing, it seems like we're there, I just want to officially, unofficially officially say, directionally, do we want to say, let's start with this proposal for the allocations, just so Tom can kind of give us a scenario, and then we will have an official vote on Monday.
That's good.
Yes.
Does anybody object to that?
Clarify the intention for these two positions. You want to put them back in the budget and take them out of the pain grant?
I've just said, I think it's warrants further discussion.
Okay,
I don't think we need to solve that yet. I think we
Yeah.
just need to
okay, that's fine.
consider it, yeah.
Your point of it would come out of bucket one and go to bucket three is not correct, though. It would, if you took it out, this health teacher out, or the dance teacher out of here,
Off the 250.
it would, if, the way it is right now, the way it was originally planned and what we saw a couple weeks ago, it comes out of what this current 250. If you don't do that, it goes to the budget. It wouldn't go into here. This is ongoing instructional, like, things that are in there that are persisting.
The health or the dance? Well, again, I think
Yeah, sorry.
they're different.
Are you just saying to maybe ride it out, like keep the health teacher in there for the second year?
Forget about the third category. If you don't fund them through the grant, your budget goes up by the amount of those salaries. That's the important piece.
So unless you move something else into this funding and reset the numbers you have for each bucket.
Unless there's an
What you'd be
offset.
doing there,
I think it's a bigger discussion. I don't think it's like, yes, let's do that. I just think it's worth considering. I think Tom, give some scenarios.
Well, one example of a scenario, and I know maybe we're getting too much into the weeds on the budget in a non-budget night, but just to give everyone a sense of it, one of the scenarios that was recommended by the full committee that Brian and I have been looking at was, for example, to take the sub-varsity coaches out of the appropriated budget and put them back into the athletic revolving fund. That will free up about $82,000 in the appropriated budget right now. Right? Is everyone remembering that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's an example of, okay, well, now what do we do with this $82,000? We could fund the health teacher. for example.
So what would
No?
disappoint me if?
Well, I'm not saying it's a good idea. I'm just using that as a mathematical example about how things would flow.
But
That was,
conversations to have during the budget.
It is.
Okay, so we maybe shouldn't talk about that.
that's not I just want to clarify that. That's not a, like, we could take that funds because you could make that change, now it's available. It was always coming from the revolving account. We sort of falsely made it available and putting it back. You're right, technically, it's just, I'd be cautious with that.
Yeah. Well, we dropped
Taking money
reliance.
from one pocket to the other, it
We
doesn't change our
dropped,
budget.
we dropped the take from the revolving fund by $114,000. 82 of which was the salary for the sub-coaches.
I think this is what you're saying, is we want to say, in all honesty and truth, and we all, again, whether we've discussed it outright, I think we all have felt a little funny about the health teacher. You know, there were reasons it happened, but there it is. You're saying, if we're going to really honor this new policy, can we move stuff around, but net out? Like, because I hear your concern, we don't want to increase, we don't want to add any, we don't want to,
We cannot.
we want to do
Sasha
both
was-
things. We want to honor the policy, but not lose an opportunity for the offset that we've given ourselves.
Or we could grandfather them in, right?
Yes,
For
right,
a
that's a
year.
consideration. But again, I
then
think it's just a
move
bigger
on.
discussion that we can have.
And the reason I brought it up, and what would, it kind of disappoints me, is when you put the dollar amount in there for the health teacher, year 2 of paying grant, it lessens that 250 above it. So the paying grant committee this year has less to work with because the health teacher is in there. And that disappoints me.
So, yes, so let me use an example, and this is all just a scenario that is not real numbers. If you put that health teacher into the appropriated budget, and I'll use your example of photography, we move photography into bucket 3, you're still going to have that same amount in bucket 1, but you'll be spending more out of bucket 3.
Correct.
That's what I'm saying. It's balancing between the FEFI's distribution and the budget, but then also within the buckets.
So if we took away from the 550 the amount of the health teacher and put that money back towards the paying grant, then that would,
Then it would increase the budget if you didn't take something out of the budget, if you put.
no,
yeah.
I mean, just, would keep this number the same, but would add whatever the salary is, deduct that from the 550 at the bottom bucket and add it to the top, so it's still coming out of the paying grant, but the paying grant has a little bit more money. So when you deduct it.
Think about it as just, aside from the buckets, just for round numbers, if it's 180,000, do you want to take that from pain?
I was just saying,
Or-
if you deducted
Yeah.
it from the 550,
Right. Yes.
that's just not. a
Think about
option.
it as, do you want to take it out of pain, or would you rather have 180,000 more for pain grants and less to offset classroom teachers?
Right, that's
Right,
That's the difference.
that's, what we don't want
it's just an option I was throwing out there.
necessarily,
Yeah.
right.
Reduces the amount that you can offset.
Right,
So now, in theory, it's taking that 550 down to 370.
yeah,
It's not the same level of benefit. That's why I would suggest keep it up here.
right. 'Cause that's where it was.
I get what you're saying. I think we all want the same thing. It's just, yeah, how we
Yeah,
get there.
I just don't
Yeah.
want, I do want the teachers to be able to apply for paying grants of substance, and I'm trying to leave them some money to do that.
I would say they did. Those were the 2 that were approved, and they approved it for 2 years. So they've already committed to that's where they want to spend it.
No, that's true.
Yeah,
Have to have this conversation next year.
Yeah.
right.
Thank you for that presentation. Thank you.
Okay,
Wonderfully done.
so that was great. That was a lot, and good movement there. Anything else about override or before we move on to the next item? Okay. We are on to the policy updates. I'm gonna recommend that, so we just happen to be on JJIB for policy, but it looks like if the athletic subcommittee comes forward with a policy that is under the umbrella of JJIB, let's just table that one for now.
Okay.
The folder here. So let's talk about all the ones except for that, and that's why I highlighted it, because I'm like, oh, let's just put this guy on hold. All right, I guess, has everybody looked at the policies and the summary? So I can read through it, or does anybody have any questions? Great job. Right back at you. Okay, if there are no questions or comments, then we can move to a vote.
You want a motion?
Sure.
Move to approve the policies in section
Okay,
J, with the exception of JJIB,
as
to be
presented.
as presented.
Second. Thank you. All right, moved by Jen, second by Jenny. Further discussion, all in favor? All right, passes. Let's hop back to the communications update.
All right.
Or
In your folder is the newsletter for February. You can see I'm furiously trying to add to it. First is the update on budget planning. Take a scan through that, representative of our discussions from earlier this month, but also kind of summarizing the 4.5% and the 2% that we discussed tonight. I think that's critically important for everyone to understand the context for where we're at. I'm starting to add just the detail around the enhancing the FEFI's policy based on the policy discussion we had and approved. You can see the start of it, I'll specifically list the three categories. An update, oh, just lost Haley. Update on the elementary school building project. We tried to keep this very much intentionally about the mechanics of what are going on. Broader communications will be coming from that group, but we want to make sure we're keeping Ipswich families aware and also of their next upcoming meeting, which we had to check the date. I know we've got a little bit of a conflict on that, so we'll confirm that this evening or tomorrow morning. Or maybe that just stands, but accomplishments and activities.
Oh, you had put as an idea a capital plan, but we didn't, it's not like we just discussed it. I didn't know if it warranted a sentence, and it's not really finalized, so I just thought we could hold on.
That's true, we reviewed it, we didn't really do much with it.
Yeah.
I think we can take that out. Yep, just trying to figure out what that, I forgot I put in there.
An
Team
update.
grant appointments, we'll add the names in there, policies. Lots going on in March. Any questions, comments? I know I'm not done with the FEFI's piece, but thoughts on any of it? Feedback?
Date of distribution. When is this going out?
Yeah, like tomorrow?
Does that logistically work if I finalize the section this evening?
Yeah, like
I guess sneak it in.
Yeah.
Monday is.
I will shoot you a note as soon as it's ready. So yeah, it'll go out tomorrow. I just wanted to make sure, sorry. It'll go out tomorrow. We just wanted to make sure we are okay for timing. That way it does actually go out in February, especially ahead of the budget meetings next. So we'll do that. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody.
New business? Okay. Vouchers and bills?
Does anybody have any questions?
There were no vouchers and bills this month.
just gonna say, yeah, they didn't even put it in the thing, and so there's none.
Correct. So it would be in the monthly report which is the first meeting of each month,
Okay,
to capture the month's activities in the prior month.
okay.
So at next Thursday night, March 5, would be all the February activity.
There's
That
no
would- that would-
February activity.
Well, it's still February. Oh, 2 more days, but it's still February.
see.
They haven't closed the month yet.
Got it.
We
Okay.
will by next Thursday.
Let's go on to the consent agenda. All right. So a new format. Can I read this all at once? You added stuff.
You
in
mean the
there?
minutes and the donations? They're two different things, but you could probably read each
So like
category.
one vote, or do they?
I think you should
per
approve the
category?
minutes and then approve the donations as two things, right? Is that what you mean?
All right.
Or,
Move,
wait a minute, or, I'm sorry, or do you mean, you could make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
that's what I mean, yeah.
Yeah, you could do that.
Yeah,
That's
but it's like called out
legit.
separately, which it
It's called
usually
out
is in
separately,
those-
it's written, and it's in the packet. You could make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Read it out loud. Are you proposing a change? What do you know?
Oh, no, I'm not, no, not my place to propose a change. I was saying that,
curious.
I
I'll
was
pick your
just trying to
brain
help you
later.
answer
Okay.
the question.
All
Yeah.
right, all right, move that the Ipswich School Committee approve the meeting minutes from January 22nd, February 4th, and February 12th, 2026 as presented. Move to accept with gratitude donation of $750 from Ipswich Education Foundation Incorporated of Ipswich for the 2026 Racing Challenge trip to be deposited into the high school gift account for the exclusive use for the Racing Challenge RC program. Move to accept a commission contribution of $871 from Geska Studio and Yearbook Publishing of Seabrook, New Hampshire, to be deposited into the Paul F. Doyon Memorial School gift account.
Second.
Moved to second by Jenny. Further discussion? All in favor? Motion passes. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Oh, I move to adjourn. Sorry.
Second.
Moved by Jenny, second by Jen. All in favor? All right, adjourned at 9:18. We did 2 minutes.